What happened was in my career, I was always very spiritual in a way. You know, I believed in God and especially Jesus Christ. And when I was young, I'm Catholic family. I made my communion and my confirmation and all that. But what I had noticed since I was a young child, that there was a prejudice toward Puerto Ricans, and I was very aware of all these things. So, but I followed American music because it was popular and it was very big on the radio. The Spanish radio didn't have all that much, they had some. And I used to listen to all these programs, and I used to buy a book called The Hit Parade. The Hit Parade is a book with all the popular songs of the time. So I used to know all the songs and get the lyrics. One day I went coming home on the train with my father on a very cold night in New York off the subway, and we get off on Prospect Avenue, and by that time I'm living on Longwood Avenue. We had moved there, and my mother had passed away. My mother had been the one that used to push for me to keep singing because she felt that I had talent. I used to sing by myself in the house, hidden. When she would say, "Canta para esta gente," I say, "Oh no, not me, I can't do it." I was very shy. So she'd say, "Vete al cuarto y canta, y aquí te escuchamos." So I would do that. But the point is that I was really involved in that, and I would go by the Hit Parade. One day, getting off the subway on a very cold winter day, I stopped in the corner where they sold the papers and magazines and things, and I see the Hit Parade there. Then I see next to it a black magazine with songs for the black population. And I said to myself, well, why? I didn't understand the separation at that time. And I said, why is there not one for the Puerto Rican people and the Hispanics? And I made a petition to God. And I said, God, if I ever get the opportunity, I would like to represent the Puerto Ricans and Hispanics through music. And that's what got me into that, to get into music, Spanish music. And I forgot about it because the most important thing at that time, I was 11 years old, was to be the kid on the street playing stickball and hitting a home run. So I went home and I played stickball and focused on that until I was, how old? Until 1950 actually. Because 1950 is when the mambo came to New York and the United States. So the biggest population here were the Puerto Ricans. And that being the case, I went to all the house parties. I would ask the guys, we would meet on the stickball field. The stickball players were a very important group because they were organized little groups of young teenagers. And they were the first groups of people that got together to make dances, social dances like the Hunts Point Palace. There was a team that we used to play against. I was always the captain of the team, by the way. I was always the leader. And we played a team called the Sparks, a very important group of stickball players. And there were many in the Bronx, in different areas, in Jackson Avenue, Prospect Lawn with Kelly, mucho. But we played for money. Everything's a money game. Todo, handball money, todo de dinero. So I played that and got very good. By 1950, I was a great little guy playing stickball. Pero cuando salió el mambo, forget about it. Yo le metí mano al baile for a year. From 1950 to 1951, I was dancing, and I used to get myself invited to all the parties. Y yo llevaba los discos, the 78s. Y da la casualidad que on the corner, I lived on Dawson Street and Longwood Avenue. And across the street from my house, había una tienda que se llama Casa Puente, a record store. El tío de Tito Puente.
Yes.
So I bought all my records there. And I would go to the next block, Kelly Street. There was two candy stores. Y da la casualidad que on the left side of the block there, on Longwood and Kelly, there's a candy store, and the owner of the candy store is Eddie Palmieri's father, and Charlie Palmieri's father.
Yep.
And I used to go there and dance, in the evenings or lunch and whatever. And so el ambiente was growing, and we used to play on the mailboxes con los palitos y cantar y cosas así. Se me metió from 1950 to 51 la fiebre. Y un día estoy escuchando un disco en un radio y yo le digo a un muchacho que está conmigo, yo le digo, what is that sound? It excites me a lot. He says, it's a cowbell. I went to a music store called Bronin's Music Store in the Bronx and bought a cowbell. And after that day, I used to chase all the wagons that had cowbells on them because they used to be the ones who collected the garbage and the stuff y venían y arreglaban la sombrilla. Yeah. So I used to get all those cowbells and buy them for $1, $2. And that's what got me started to learn to want to play the timbales. 1951. So what I did, having the mentality of a young child, because I was still a teenager and a young child, I said, well, you know what, I want to play, but I don't know how to play, and nobody's going to hire me. So I'll get my friends that play around like that and make a band. 1951, I started. I got a friend of mine called Manny Quintana, que murió ya. He was the conga player, and myself. That was the beginning.
So
I was very fortunate to have been born in the Bronx. I don't call it the South Bronx, it's the Bronx. And I was born in the original Lebanon Hospital. And the Lebanon Hospital was located a block from Jackson on Caldwell Avenue on a mountain that was knocked down, and then they put projects on there. And it used to be a hospital from the Civil War. Then they moved the hospital to the Grand Concourse, and the rest is history. But I was born there on February 20, 1935. So I'm the youngest band leader from the 50s at that time.
that is the South Bronx stuff.
Well, people call it that. Do I what?
How did you start?
How did I start? I started my musical career when I was born. I grew up as a child living on right off Prospect Avenue on 161st Street, right behind a theater called the,
Presidente?
no, this was a big theater. They used to have vaudeville there. You know what, vaudeville? And they had entertainers come every week. I'll give you the name in a minute, but right off Prospect Avenue, right near the subway and all that. So I used to go to the theater all the time and see different singers and listen to the radio. I was singing songs by Carlos Gardel when I was 4 and 5 years old, and we're talking about 1939, 1940. And I used to have the ability to go and see these singers in the movies sing and entertain people and be able to remember the whole melody and the words. So that was an attribute that helped me a lot, just to remember lyrics. Sometimes I forget them though. So the point is that I was singing and also dancing. The Puerto Ricans were all in the Bronx at that time. My family came in 1920 because my father was from Vieques. And in Vieques, what they did is that they came and took the people off different areas for the Army and the Navy. So where the Navy was, and they had the naval base, was the property of my family, and it was all farmland. They used to have farms. And so they came in the 1920s. My grandfather stayed in Puerto Rico, but my father and his brothers and sisters came here, and they got into different types of careers. But as far as getting into the music, I started as a singer and a dancer. At the age of 5, I went to the original Paramount Theater in Manhattan, and I saw a young man by the name of Frank Sinatra singing, surrounded by thousands of Bobby Soxers. That was a group of young ladies that wore a certain type of shoes and socks, Bobby Soxers. So I said to myself, oh my God, this is wonderful. It was very impressive. The theater was black, and all of a sudden you have a light go down to the middle, and there's Frank Sinatra.
Oh, wow.
And he was singing, night and day, you are the one. Oh, everybody went crazy. So that was my inspiration, him and Bing Crosby. And I loved these guys, and I was involved spiritually and mentally in that type of music. But also the Puerto Ricans in New York used to get together on weekends for house parties. There was no nightclubs or things like there were later. And so I learned how to dance in the house. There was no mambo, and they didn't call it mambo at the time, but there was guaracha, rumba, conga. You know, that was exciting. And later down the years when I got into music, the cha-cha and the mambo came out very strong.
So how?
Yeah, no, but you see the social structure
Yes.
before 1945 was much different from after. You know, things changed a lot. Well, it would be nice to get it on the camera, you know, just give you some. Oh, you are? Oh, see, in those days you could live with your doors open and the windows open, summer or winter, whatever. Nadie se metía a probarte. Ballpoint pens did not exist. Huh? Televisions did not exist. And many, many other things.
So what you have was music to bring you all together.
At that time, the music started bringing us together. What used to bring the neighborhoods together was sports like the New York Yankees from the Bronx. Huh? My Yankee hat is in the car. And playing ball. We all wanted to be like Babe Ruth and all those great Yankee players.
Gangs didn't exist back then.
Sure they did.
They did?
Oh, yeah.
But like Latino?
They had to make gangs because habían grupos irlandeses, italianos y grupos negros and others. Pero los más pacíficos eran los judíos porque ellos no estaban en guerra.
So, entonces, en ese tiempo y en esa era, y el barrio donde...
Yo no venía al barrio para acá, el barrio en el Bronx.
El barrio, quiero decir, the neighborhood.
Sí, yeah.
Not the
Yeah.
barrio. I mean, the neighborhood
Right.
donde te criaste, or you know, the neighborhood you grew up in. How close or far would you say?
Exactly. The connection was the stickball, number one. And then what happened was that I started a band with the mentality of young kids. I got Manny Quintana on conga. Then I found a piano player at PS 39 who plays good stickball, pitching in. And I got him to rehearse twice. And then he quit. So I left his house because he wasn't there. I went to the stickball field. He was playing very good. He said, no, I quit. I don't want to play. I'd rather play stickball. I walk up to Kelly Street in Longwood and I tell one of the kids out there, oh, my heart is broken. My little group broke up and it was just getting started. And he says, oh, go down the block by home plate on the right-hand building. There's a kid named Eddie. He plays. I didn't know who that was. So I went up there, bing, 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 went up the building, knocked on the door. And this kid answers, who is it? Blah, blah, blah. Then he opens the door and I tell him, hey, you're Eddie? He said, yeah. So I told him, I want to make a little group. I hear you play the piano. I want you to play with me. And he turns around and asks his mother, Mami, este muchacho quiere que yo toque piano para él. And I got to meet his mother. So I was able to get him to rehearse and play, you know, because up the block on Kelly, Bocanegra, a famous piano teacher, was in the corner. He used to go there to rehearse, to learn. So I got him to play with me and we rehearsed in a school that's very famous now for salsa called PS 52. I graduated from PS 52. At the time I graduated from PS 52, I was already involved a little bit in the music, but not as much as after I graduated, because I graduated in 1950, and when the mambo dancing came on, so by 1951 into 52, I rehearsed in PS 52 with my band, Eddie Palmieri. Then I got to meet a kid called Luis Chiqui Perez, el bongocero, and then he got his uncle. His uncle was Luis Goicochea. Luis Goicochea was the conga player who ended up with Tito Rodriguez. Chiqui Perez eventually landed with Tito Puente. And there was a kid called Albert who was a great conga player. He was a student of another very famous conga player. I'll think of the name in a minute. And so I started getting guys. I went to a rehearsal once and with a big band, and they had 3 trumpet players, and I asked them to come and sit in my band. Larry, Chino, Acevedo, Claude Esperson, Jamaiquino, something like that, and another Luis Robles, 3 trompetas. They came to a rehearsal and they stayed for years. And then eventually I picked up a kid in the neighborhood called David Perez, a bass player. I had to pick him up and take him home. I had to pick up Eddie and take him home. So I was like the older, 2 years older, getting there. But it was very interesting. So I had in PS 52 every Friday, they charged them, I think, a quarter to each kid to come in. Y se llenaba el lugar because they were all learning the mambo. And the English songs that they used to play, they were rock and roll didn't exist, but it was black music, the Fish and all that, very popular. And that was the beginning. And from there we kept going.
The Irish or the Jewish people lived close to you.
No,
Is it an issue?
not really. In some sections of the Bronx and South Bronx, like you call it, it might have been where they were starting to touch on each other's territory, But I never had any problem. I was very fortunate. I was very friendly, and everybody liked me, so that was good. And
But surrounding neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Were you in the middle, or they were like right next to each other in the same building?
They-
You will have
yeah, oh yeah,
Blanco
yeah,
and
everything,
red, yeah?
everything, yeah, absolutely. And we existed, it wasn't as bad as El Barrio. El Barrio was bad. Y El Barrio was a place where you had to be careful. Porque, ¿cómo se llama? Había más separación y más envidia y más cosas, But
So you went to 39.
yes,
That's
I went
the
to,
one on,
I went,
Lake Street,
right.
and 52 is on Lake.
But I also went to a school called 124, which was in the Bronx on the other side of Westchester Avenue, PS 124, near a junior high school called PS 51. I went there also. Y nosotros nos mudamos porque yo jugando pelea y eso, me dieron con una piedra aquí y me rompieron la cabeza. Pero,
I see the scar.
yeah, y eran los young kids con los negritos, pero jugando, not real fights. So we moved to Longwood Avenue. And there were still problems in Longwood Avenue, but not really what there have been today. Nobody would shoot you, and it wasn't bad. There were fights in the school. Los negritos todos me querían. Yo era el artista de la escuela. You know what that is? I used to do the drawings for the magazine of the school. And when I graduated, they had printed these things every year when they would print magazines and publications.
So besides being a performer and a dancer and an instrument player,
I grew up drawing.
you also had the
Since I was a
talent
child, I was drawing all the time. So everybody in the school knew that I was the artist. And I received the first medal for art ever in the school when I graduated. They had never given an art medal. And there was the first bilingual teacher called Miss Cruz, who came to PS 52, and she would teach the Spanish and Puerto Ricans mostly bilingual, to speak English. And they eventually named the school after her. Yeah, so she was a very, very aggressive and up-forward lady, and did a lot of things. She gave a lot of plays. I was also in her plays, so I was acting on stage, and so I had that ability to do that stuff porque me gustaba, but I was still very shy, and for a long time. See, now that I'm a little older, I'm 17 years old now, so I would practically hide from the people. One of the first places that I got a real good job every Saturday was a place in Queens called the Sunnyside Gardens. The Sunnyside Gardens was around 45th Street and Queens Boulevard, okay? And it was a big boxing arena, and they would take the seats and the ring out of the place every Saturday and get 1,500 people to dance with a 16-piece American orchestra. The guy's name was Al Lombardi. Big band, trumpet, saxophones, and we were the intermission band, the Latin band, okay? Orlando Marin and the orchestra.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was good. But
Besides Huntsman Palace, what other places around there that you perform?
oh
They
yeah,
have dances there.
I opened a lot of those places. First of all, let me put it in another way. I'm the first successful orchestra coming from the Bronx, period. There were others before me. Al Santiago, the leader of Alegre Records, had an orchestra, and as a teenager, I had seen him play. And I went to different performances in different schools. And he got out of it, and he became a record producer. There was a band called Una Trompeta que tocaba muy bien. I'll think of it in a minute. Very good trumpet player. Anyway, this gentleman had a great band. There was Hector Rivera. You probably may not know Hector Rivera. He had one of the first orchestras with trumpets. And he had a drummer, a timbal player called Joe Rodriguez, who was Charlie Palmieri's personal drummer all the time for many years. And he used to give me many hints. And Michael Collazo happened to be going to PS51, and he went, as I did also. I was recommended to go to the School of Industrial Arts. The name is now School of Art and Design on 57th Street. So I went there. Ray Barretto was 5 or 6 years ahead of me. He went to the School of Industrial Arts also, but he dropped out. He told me he dropped out. Very good stickball player, Ray Barretto. Let me get a zip here. In any case, probably the first big highlight was probably playing in 52, PS52, when I didn't know anything. And I was just telling her that I'm self-taught. I never went to school to learn anything. 7 years after I was playing with an orchestra and recording and all that, I went to a drum teacher to see about reading, because I didn't read. I memorized everything. The point is that the starting is very important. You have to have the heart, the drive, and the belief in yourself. You got to believe in yourself that, hey, I can do this because I'm going to do it. And I practice more than a guy who goes to school, and I analyze things much more, and I invent more because I have to get involved to see what it is. So that's important. I worked as a social worker for 15 years, and what used to bother me the most was when a lot of these teachers that went to college and they're talking to these women and men that are not at that level, they would say, yeah, you could do it, I did it. Everyone is different. Everyone is different. Sometimes the best thing you could do is just to follow your heart. You might just want to be the guy who shines shoes in the corner. So whatever it is, God put everybody here for a purpose. And the thing is, love everybody and cooperate, especialmente cuando se trata de la familia. You love God, you love your family, you love your children, your wife, your husband. That's very important. No, yo voy pa'lante, no, everybody pa' atrás. And that's a bad thing in any field. Well, the first one that I would have to say is Eddie Palmieri, because since he started in the 60s, he's been going forward. He's had different problems and situations, but he's a band leader that's kept going. We need more band leaders to become band leaders and to specifically focus on that. Focus on making bands and rehearsing and getting guys together. Pete is one of the leaders today that's trying to make a band, and he works and does stuff. And you need leaders to lead the way. And there are others like your friend that was playing with you the other day.
Richie?
Yeah, Richie. He's trying to do the same thing. El pulpo. You know, but you need to really become a real leader and focus on that and not go around with other guys. I would recommend to focus more on being a leader, creating work, and going out of the system, because that's what I had to do. I was blocked out of the system by Jose Cubello and Tito Puente and the Alpha Artists because it was like a monopoly. You may not know that. Musicians know this, people who are involved. Agencies and agents try to quítate tú para ponerme yo, you know, and that's bad. It should be more of a cooperation. We should welcome every young artist to come and play and to succeed.
Yes.
Because everyone who comes and succeeds and plays well creates music, and it brings the music up. That's the bottom line for everybody.
Keeps it alive.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to Florida, as I said, Saturday to play for the Colombians. And they love our music. They have my recordings since the 1960s. And they still dance it and they love it. We need to get the Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans here and the Cubans all to realize that abaniquito da da, eso todavía suena. Porque si tú lo tocas con sabor y alegría, it's going to make people dance. That's the bottom line.
It's true.
When they were writing this book about Tito Puente and the drumming book that he did, the one of the editors and participants, a teacher, he asked me to say something, and what I said, and they used this quotation, and I just said it, bingo. The most important thing in the music, in this kind of Afro-Cuban music, are the drums and the voices. Everything else is a luxury. Porque eso es el mambo. El mambo es una cosa espiritual que ya viene por miles de años desde África. Y ellos tocaban los tambores para darle gracias a Dios, whether you call it santería, whatever you want to call it. Any religion or any name you give anything that loves people and says thank you to God, that's good. And that's what gets all the people to dance. Everywhere I go, el mambo.
We have to keep it alive.
That's what it is. Este niño, yo le digo niño porque vino a tocar conmigo en PS52 por la primera vez. I got a recording about it too. Él estaba empezando y lo tengo ahí, tocando. You gotta hear it, I keep telling you. Yo le había abierto las puertas a muchos músicos, and it's
The
great.
Lord has blessed you.
Absolutely. Oh,
To
no,
whom
no.
much is given, much is required. So you have.
The payment that I get es la alegría de cuando la gente, especialmente los mayores, entran así y salen así, con una cosa, y es la vida que le doy. La música te da vida, es una medicina.
Yes, that is so true. Can we take some pictures now with Felipe and him and you and me? The beginning of this.
Orlando.
You don't need this off, right? Did I give you enough information?
Yes, but more than that is the joy that you have given me to hear you talk about, our culture, our history. It's beautiful.
Priceless.
Es una historia.
Priceless.
Yes.
Y hay que darle crédito a los stickball players.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted.
You know,
That's why I
yeah.
asked, because I know that
My
the South
girlfriend
Bronx was
Gloria
known
says
for
they don't
that.
want to know about stickball.
Yes, they definitely do, because it has to be not only
That's the
that you
foundation.
play, yes, and not only that you were playing music, but you had a life there. It was an enriched life. You were a kid, you play, you have friends, It has to help all.
Cuando no habían carros en Nueva York. That's what I have been doing. As a matter of fact, Saturday I'm going to Florida to play for the Colombians, who are my biggest fans. I've played in 1993 when Chibirico Davila was alive, and we played in Cali for 16,000 people. And then I went to Bogota representing New York and the United States in Salsa.
I'm gonna have to see how can I get back to DR so we can play in DR. Tú has tocado en Santo Domingo, ¿verdad? En la República Dominicana.
Nunca me han invitado.
Ah, no, tenemos que
A
hacer.
mí no me han invitado a Puerto Rico. Never. Joe Quijano me trajo una vez, pero I don't count that because Joe Quijano is my former singer. He's like my brother, you know.
No,
Pero
vamos a ver si
a
el
Puerto
Jesse-
Rico,
el Jesse de la
Santo
República
Domingo.
Dominicana, de Agua Caracaína. You've been there, right?
Where? Dominican Republic?
You feel all right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Hi, my name is Orlando Marin, the last Mambo King. And if you want to know anything about music and the history of the legends and the people that made this music what it is today, the pioneers and all that, you've come to the right place because you're going to get it all right here, baby. Hang in. The best advice you can get to a musician in any area is to continue to practice and play, to be positive, and to try to form a group or different groups where young guys could come and learn and improve and make bands. You see, when we started, we had the advantage that there weren't a lot of bands. There were bands, but the bands used to stay together. You know, they wouldn't run from one band to another. They would stay together. One bad thing that the Fania label did, I don't know who was in charge of it at the time, but when they started just featuring singers with the same orchestra behind them, everything sounded the same, and they called it salsa romántica, no era salsa para bailar.
Wasn't that actually Ralph Mercado?
I know, I didn't want to mention his name, but that was Ralph Mercado and the person that he put in charge to do that. And that's okay because there was no competition.
Did they
One-
always have the same outfits back then?
there were still bands, but the band that recorded was bands, musicians from different bands. You know, it was like an all-star band. But what happened to Fajardo y su charanga, Tiro Puente, los timbales, Tiro Rodríguez cantando? Había un grupo, La Playa Sextet, y varios otros grupos, Hector Rivera, you know. La cosa es que you feature las trompetas, los bongos, los timbales, y los violines, y la flauta. No solamente los cantantes. Los cantantes son muy importantes. Yo soy cantante también y me encanta. Pero cuando se hace un grupo, tiene que ser like a baseball team. You got to stick together and improve because that's how you get better. And let the audience be the one to say, yeah, I like this one.
Yeah,
Not the propaganda.
I like that.